Good evening, everyone. Some of you were here last week. We lost a few from last week, but then we gained a bunch from last week. So nice to have everybody here, and it's my pleasure to introduce Monsignor Gaston, who's stationed right now as pastor of Mother of Sorrows in Marysville.
It's closer than I thought.
It is close.
I got here in 14 minutes. Is that good?
Yeah, I usually make it in about 12 for the school mass.
Oh, okay.
Don't tell anybody I said it.
I think you were speeding. Yes, with ice. Thank you, Father Ray. Good evening, everybody. Nice to be with you. And so we have the 5th and 6th grade and up from there here tonight. So here we have 1 hour, and we're just going to talk about one of the big things that we hear in our church today. It's a big word, and I'm going to ask the kids if you've covered this word, evangelization. You were just talking about that? Who's Kevin? What's he have to do with evangelization? He taught you what it meant, so I could ask him, and he could tell me what it meant. Kevin, you're on. Bringing people back to the church. Okay. Do people leave the church sometimes? Why did we'd even ask some of the adults. Everybody's got a story. A lot of people come to the church, a lot of people leave the church. They get mad or they don't like things going on. What are some of the reasons, and what are some of the reasons that people leave the Catholic Church? This is a trick question. You have to watch out. Too many rules? I'm sorry? They aren't the same religion. Well, sure, okay. They don't like what you're teaching. They don't like the priest. I was waiting for that one. I'm sorry. They don't like the way the church is set up. You mean like this? I remember when the church was all like that, way back. When I used to be in Irwin, they changed it around, huh? Some people get mad when they move the furniture too. Yeah, they do. Now the adults, you're not just going to listen to me talk to kids. What are some of the other, in your own experiences over the years, what are some of the reasons that people leave churches? Do you want to add to that? Go ahead. They can't come. Shut-ins, sick. Go ahead, right here. 1 second.
They have the feeling that the church is not doing anything for them.
It's not doing anything for them. That's a big one. They don't get anything out of it or that kind of stuff. It's kind of dead or those kind of things. Anything else? Who else was? Yes. What? I'm sorry, who are you? There you are. They feel they don't belong. They don't fit in. And who makes them feel like that? Could be the community. The people who think they're in don't want them in. So it's who's in and who's out, huh? Sometimes we have little small groups. We call them cliques. In school, do you have kids who hang out with each other and they won't let you be with them? Do you ever get into some of that? Has that ever happened? No? Oh, come on, sure. Is it fun when you want to be with others and they kind of don't, we don't want you to be with us? What's it feel like when you get that message?
It makes you feel like you're being left out.
Like you're being left out. Who likes to be made to feel left out? Nobody. Who likes to be made to feel that they belong? Everybody. Now our lesson is over. We can all go home. Because the challenge to the church is the same thing as we're talking about socially with children and with adults of every age. I think we think there's too much, we think of church in too highfalutin terms, when really when you boil it down, it's the way people are with each other. And that's what I would like to talk a little bit about tonight. Let me use another big word, and I want you to define it. Okay? Hospitality. Huh? It's a vocabulary word? It was. Oh, so you're an expert in hospitality. You know do you have a definition? Hospitality? I have a bad finger. I'm going to shake your hand with my left hand. Excellent. Say it out loud so everybody can hear it. Making the people who were in that place feel comfortable. Did you ever go somewhere and you say, I can't wait to get out of here? How many times is that church? For whatever reason, huh? We won't go there. But think about that. But hospitality, now some people think, I don't know, Father Dave, is there a hospitality committee at St. Regis? Sort of. And what would they do? Greeters. So that means, how many greeters do you have in this church?
We have 2 doors and 2 masses a weekend, so that's 4 weekend.
4 greeters.
4 per weekend.
4 per weekend. And how many total? 24? So, if I came to St. Regis without my collar on and had a nose and a mustache and came in the pew, would one greeter greet me and everybody else in the pews ignore me? I'm getting a little bit of both, huh? I think this is a challenge in every parish. I've not been a great fan of greeters over the years, only because some people officially greet you, then nobody else talks to you. Oh, the greeter's supposed to greet you, but no, the person next to you doesn't. I think what we're talking about here is hospitality. Some people think it's coffee and cookies. The hospitality committee is, let's have coffee and cookies when we're done. It's like the 8th sacrament after everything we do. No, hospitality is exactly that. It's the way we think about other people and wanting them to feel comfortable with us. And it's really an act of love because I'm not just thinking about me, I'm thinking about the people around me. And I've gone to many situations, and especially, socially, if you go anywhere by yourself, it's a couple's world, by the way. If you're single or not with anybody and have to go to a wedding reception, go to a party, or if you even where you go out with your friends, if you go by yourself and you walk in and it's like, do I know anybody here yet? And then people will look at you and look the other way. I've had that happen many times at wedding receptions. I'll go to the wedding reception after the wedding, and I'll walk in and I'll say, please God, help me to see somebody here whose face I recognize. Because strangers won't look at you. And when you're a priest, they either run to you or they run away from you. It's one or the other extreme. But hospitality is about that. And when we're talking evangelization in the Catholic Church, it's a big word, but it means if we want people to be with us and to come to be a part of who we are, then what are we going to do to make them get the message that we want them? Because we can put out a sign, can put it on the website, Father, you can put it in the bulletin, all are welcome. And then you get there and nobody looks at you. If that happens, then you say, we're sending mixed messages. And I think we want to make this all about the priest. Oh, it's the priest's job to welcome everybody. No, it ain't. Yes.
Father Dave does a wonderful thing at the start of Mass. He always greets everybody that's in the church and the visitors. He welcomes as well. But in addition, he also tells us all to greet those around us.
Oh, Father Dave has you greet each other before Mass?
Thank you. I'll greet you.
That's good. You get extra points tonight. That's good. That's a very important. A couple of weeks ago, I was on vacation out in California. Actually, it was in a warmer place. A little vacation before Lent. And so we went to Mass on Sunday and sat in the pews. It was kind of a Hispanic church. And the priest, I'd met the priest before Mass, and he said, well, I said, we're just here to, don't make a big deal. He said, well, we introduce all visitors at the Masses here. So we're going to ask you to stand up and say where you're from. I said, all right. I didn't want to do it, but we did. So after communion, and do we have any visitors? Well, there was a 50th anniversary couple. They stood up, and they went down. The priest gave them a blessing. Well, then there were other people from different states, and I put up my hand and said, Pittsburgh. Well, everybody looked, and then my friend was from Oklahoma. Well, they noted that. Well, and that was it. Well, when we were leaving, and outside we were kind of spending some time around it, people come up and said, oh, you're the guy from Pittsburgh. They didn't know we were priests, which I was glad. I didn't go there to be a priest. I was on vacation. But they said, oh, you're the guy from Pittsburgh. Why do they followed up on that. And 3 or 4, at least, people they came up and said, aren't you from Pittsburgh? Well, it wasn't just an exercise in, all right, stand up if you're from out of town. They watched, and they did. The follow-up said they were listening. Well, as a stranger, it's nice to be welcomed like that. And then everybody clapped for all the visitors. Would that make you feel welcome in that church? I think it did. And not just because the priest said, who are you? But the people afterwards were very kind. And that kind of a thing. And that's what made it different. Too often in our church, we don't think enough. We are so busy praying, being quiet, looking straight ahead, and not looking sideways, and having been taught all kind of messages from over the years, how you're supposed to act in church. Many times, we forget that we're here to be a community. How do we feel? See, I think somehow, we're all here to worship Jesus. So I'm here to worship Jesus. Don't distract me. Well, where's Jesus? Is Jesus only up here? Where else is Jesus during the Mass? In every person. Is that what you guys were going to say? Jesus is in us. Where 2 or 3 are gathered, I'm sitting between you. He didn't say it quite like that. Where 2 or 3 are gathered, there I am. So I think we have to think about that. How is Jesus present? And how do we see Jesus in the people around us? Now, there's a number of different things that we can think about. I wrote an article about this a couple years ago, and this goes back a couple years. Students were asked to attend liturgical services in different churches. And much to the surprise of the instructor, these were 20-year-olds. What most got them was, in the other churches, which was what was most attractive, was the hospitality. They rated highly such experiences: being greeted at the door, people moving over so they could be seated in the pew. Are you as bad as every other church I've ever been in? This is my seat. I had to tell the parishioners in my last parish, I checked the records. There are no deeds to those pews. Move over. People won't budge. Now, if you're arthritic and you're 110 years old, or not everybody can move easily. Well, in the church that we were that Sunday, there was a family with an younger family with a fellow who was probably a teenager, and an older lady. Have to watch out how we say it. An older lady came in with her cane, and she wanted to sit in that pew. And I said, I'm going to see what they do. They made her walk over every person to sit in the empty spot. She had to walk over them with her cane to get a seat. Do you think that was good? Well, I was mad for her. And then she kissed the last boy who was her grandson. So it was all the same family. I said, well, we'll give them a break on that one. But we people won't move. I don't want you to sit by me. Notice what they're saying. People moved. And again, it's not about the moving or the moving. What is the message when you ignore the person trying to get in the pew? It's rude. Where else would you, if I came to your house and you wouldn't let me sit down because you were sitting there, I'd stand and look at you. Think about that. I mean, we wouldn't do that, I hope. Why would we do that in church? Because we've been socialized in some of this behavior. I'm going to write a book before I die, it might be on my bucket list. Bad Catholic church behavior. I've threatened this already. Bad Catholic church behavior. It's the rude things, or the things that are not very nice, that people do when they're at church. Parishioners visiting with each other before and after Mass. Some people like to do it and the rest get mad. Talk outside, talk at home. I heard just recently in Murraysville, somebody said, we came into Mass and we saw another couple that we hadn't seen for a while, so we were chit-chatting before Mass started. There's a person in the front next to who turns around and says, be quiet, I'm praying. Do you think Jesus was impressed? Be quiet, I'm praying. Remember, on Sundays, I think we forget this. We are not here to be private. We're here to be public. It's public worship. Do your private stuff, watch the Mass on TV. Nobody will distract you. But when we are together, part of the worship is taking each other seriously. The body of Christ is gathered in these pews. We have to be more attentive to that. And when we are more hospitable like that, people want to be there. Do you want to go to a place where they won't look at you and get mad at you? And I've also heard stories where people correct other people's children in church. And with a vengeance. Are you allowed to correct other people's children? Are other people allowed to correct you? Who do you want correcting you? Your mom. You want, huh? And no one. Nobody wants to be corrected. That's honest. That's kind of honest. But this thing of other people's misbehavior, and I've heard people have reported to me some terrible things about insulting kids, expecting 4-year-olds to act like they're 44. And then older people are distracted by kids at Mass, younger people. Well, all you have to do is say one thing and they'll never come back. Are we glad that they came? And then I've had to think kids up and down the aisle during Mass. I said, I don't look at them because I'll lose my train of thought. But I'm not, and I do remember one situation that was reported. There was one priest in this diocese many years ago. He's now dead, so we can talk about him. Who, from the pulpit, told the parents to take a crying baby out of church. Now, I'm sure a lot of people said, thank God he did it. They never forgave him. The people were so upset. Now again, then they say, well, parents don't know how to correct their children. And the way grandparents corrected their children and the way their children correct their grandchildren is different. But we have a lot of feelings about this stuff, and if we're not careful, we want to have everything just the way we want it. It's not attentive to other people. We have to be very careful, because then we're not welcoming. We need to be social in the good sense and be welcoming to people. And the other thing that people acknowledge them. I had a friend about a year ago. Someone was telling me this story. They're Catholic, but the adult daughter, was dating a fellow who belongs to one of these non-denominational churches. They have it down. They're better than we are. Well, she went with her boyfriend to that church and was welcomed with open arms. Come into the cafe, have a cup of coffee, do this. Who are you? They got everything but her social security number. That's supposed to be funny. Okay. Well, they're into. I mean, she was new in that congregation. They went way out of their way to make her feel welcome as a new person. Her mother told me that her parents went there another Sunday there was something going on there with whatever. So they decided to go. Same thing. Oh, you're so-and-so's mom and dad. They connected the parents with the daughter, went out of their way to welcome them, sit down, have a cup of coffee. They did a wraparound with them. And they really felt welcome in that church. It's never been quite like that in a Catholic church. No, we got to pray to Jesus, and this is serious stuff. Now, I'm making I'm pushing the envelope a little here. We're not all that bad, but we could all be better. But that's a parish-to-parish thing. Some parishes are better than other parishes. I've been Father fill-in over the years. I've been in a lot of different parishes. And on Sunday, you get a sense of what's going on in a parish by how they act on Sunday at Mass. You could do a little survey, and you could do a little analysis. So while you're watching the priest on Sunday, don't think we're not watching you. It's a two-way street. But there are other things that we could do. This whole notion of strangers. I think we just don't get the stranger. Look at all the conflict to the adults with immigration and all the political footballing going on around how to solve the immigration problems in this country. I don't think I'm going to get into that one. How many of your ancestors came from other countries into this country and went through the same thing? You too? What countries did your families come from? Do you know? Italy? Ireland? Italy? I'm sorry? Italy. Okay. A lot of Italians here. Italy? Italy? Italy. Any non-Italians? We got Italy well represented. Germany? France? Ukraine. Okay. That's a hot-button country right now, isn't it? Well, how do you think they were treated when they came here? Do you think they were made to feel welcome? I've heard some horrible stories of how immigrants were treated when they came here and were a threat to the workforce, and the last one here was at the bottom of the heap. We're not good with welcoming strangers. But one of the corporal works of mercy is welcoming the stranger. We have to see that as we are in today. Where do you meet people? Where do you go? People, it used to be Main Street in the old neighborhoods when you had I don't know about Trafford so much. In the old patch towns, the porch was on the front of the house. So people sat on the porches, and we had a front porch, and you sat on the porch, people walked by, you talked. There are no front porches in houses today in developments in suburbia, and the deck is in the back. Where do you go to talk to people? People drive in and out of their garages, right? Where do you go? Let me ask you kids, where do you go to hang out with your friends? School? At your house? A park? Movie? You have to talk a little louder. The street. Okay? Is that what you're going to say? You go to the mall? Oh, that's been a little bit kind of dangerous now over in Monroeville, huh? Sports, have arenas and places. But where do we go to hang out and meet people and greet? There's not a lot of places to do that. Should our church be the place, one of the major places, where we can spend time mingling and being with each other, as opposed to drive in and drive out? Some people, all they'd like is drive through, like driving through McDonald's, pick up your host and keep on going. We'll never do that, I hope, at least while I'm alive. Get me in and out of here real quick, which means get out of my way. More sins are committed in the parking lots of churches around the Sunday Mass. But let's look at some of the other things about a parish, things that we could do. And this is just a broad stroke. This is not telling you what to do, but how we in our parishes have to think. You can think about this, what it means here. Registering new parishioners. Let's talk. I don't know what you do here, but I'm thinking. I know I have to do some things. When in the last parish that I was in, I decided I was going to interview, if anybody who registered in the parish, I was going to set up an interview with them, have the family come in, sit down, and we would talk. And I got started, and then I said they could fill out the papers, but they weren't kosher till I met with them. Meaning they weren't done till we had a conversation. And that's then so we would sit down, I had the most wonderful conversation. It was an excuse to talk. I had the best conversations. I said to one couple, because everybody says, what do I have to do for the church? Well, I said, what can this church do for you and your family? The guy looked at his wife and he said, I don't remember the last time anybody ever asked us that question. It's what are you going to do for the church, not what's the church going to do for you. Well, what I discovered, there was a lot of needs that these families had. So it's the way we bring in new parishioners. How do you bring in new parishioners here? And many times people need to be invited to join a parish. People think still I belong to the parish that I grew up in 80 years ago in another state. No, you don't. You belong to St. Regis if you live here. But would we ever think of inviting people to join this church with us? How many people in this community are unchurched? Who's going to invite them? We need a program? Kiss of death. What if Father Dave said to every family at St. Regis, I want everyone here to invite one household who is not connected to a church or who is left to come here?
I just have to say that people get scared of Catholics because you got all these rules. And like if I would invite, like I have neighbors, if I would invite them to come to church, they would be like, well, I can't.
I don't know how to say it.
This is all
It's what they imagine it is.
Well, but the thing is I wouldn't know what answer to give them. Like,
That's
well, hey, it's so, why am Can I make a sign of a cross because I'm not baptized? You know, like things, I know that I have friends who honestly go, that's why they are acting on
Excuse me.
because there seems to be
It's easier.
stigma of what's,
Are you talking about people who've left the Catholic Church?
no, I'm talking,
Or people who've never been here?
a little bit of both.
Both.
A little bit of both.
Well, that's a good point. It's like, what do I think it is? If I go there, what are they going to make me do? Or if I have been there and left, I got to go in and face these people. And then someone's going to say, well, look who showed up. And the ceiling of this church is going to fall in. You can be sure they're thinking it if they don't say it. Please, that's good.
But even things like, we have a direct deposit system here at the church.
Yeah,
You put your-
online giving, yeah, that's great. Use it.
But if you're not putting in an envelope, believe me, I feel like I'm getting the stares because it's, basket comes by and you don't put something in.
I got news for you. Too many people have no problem letting the thing pass them by. Without blushing at all. Yeah, but I hear you, yeah. But you can they have envelopes now. You could check, you could give an envelope, it's in the packet, I give electronically. Just turn in if there's ways to solve that too. But you make a good point, and I'm just using that as the point is being invitational. I don't think Catholics are invitational like a lot of our fundamentalist Christians are. Now you could agree or disagree with that. Any of you have any thoughts about that? Any of you had experiences with this? Okay, over here.
We tend to be exclusive rather than inclusive.
We tend to be exclusive.
Yeah, so there are things that you can't join in with if you're not Catholic by coming in. You're not sure about, like Mary Jo mentioned, what the protocol.
How to act, what to do, so that can be intimidating. Uh-huh. And then communion, sure, yeah.
Or other churches that are non-denominational, or, you just like, everybody's kind of.
But by the way, this is not only to Mass. Do you invite them to your social activities? There are other things that go on that people could be invited to? Organizations, maybe you're taking a trip. Why wouldn't we think to open it up to somebody who's never had that experience? I just don't think, we're just not social, we don't think in those categories. You put the Catholicism before the Christianity, and we pay a price for that. I think we're trying to be holier before we want to be holy, but we're not yet human. I've made a case with Eucharistic ministers about smiling when they give communion. I've had many battles over how to give communion. People have all kind of different expectations. When I give communion, I try to look at each person in the eye, smile, and say the body of Christ. And they respond, amen. Some people have poker faces like they look like the world is going to end in 10 seconds. We have been taught to be so serious. It is so serious to receive Jesus that there is no joy. How do you show that you're happy to receive Jesus and not just that you better do it right? So that's there are a lot of those different kind of things. One Sunday over at Mother Sorrow's, I'm getting a little more chutzpah as they're longer. I said to them all, you're all so serious. I want everybody to smile when you're coming up for communion. Well, they did. For one Mass. And then they went back to being mad. That's what it looks like, mad. It's not mad, it's mindless. We know what we're doing there. How are we human and spiritual at the same time? Grace builds on nature. We're trying to be holy when we're not human. That doesn't sell. And I don't think that's the way Jesus did it. He engaged people where they were, and based on that, something else happened.
Take them, we've got a lot to talk about.
Okay? All right? Well, thank you for being here and helping us along tonight, okay? You keep up the good work. It's nice to see you all. No, you guys can't go. Okay. I wasn't sure what to make of you. Just some other, does this spur any thinking? We're being very, I don't want to be too up in the clouds with you tonight. This is being very re-examining ourselves at the practical level day in and day out. And we all need to think a little bit more about what's the message we send non-verbally when we gather at the Sunday Mass. If visitors come and see us and observe what we do, what would they go out saying about you as members of St. Regis? I think that's the question. I don't have an answer for it. I'm not here. But I think we ought to reflect on the way we act. And I like to, what I do, like we are creatures of habit, and we stay with what's known, and we don't like change. Right? You're no different than anybody else. Talk to somebody different if you have the opportunity on the weekend. And consider that your penance for Lent. Who do we talk to? The same people. Other people, walking in, other people are there. Who are they? I don't know. Don't ask me. Imagine greeting people, the stranger, not the known person. What would that do to us? I just think these, and you can come up with 1,000 other, there are many different things. How would we evaluate ourselves? Here in this parish, how would you evaluate yourself? How good or how not good are we, and what could we do or not? What are we already doing? What are we doing that probably isn't all that good, could be changed? And what aren't we doing that we really ought to start? Those are all good questions, because this changes as we change. It's also the way we do programs. And priests are notoriously bad at this, even the living ones. You have to come to these sacramental prep meetings, and if you don't show up, your kid doesn't get communion. I'm sure that's never happened here. I hope it hasn't. But it happens a lot. You've got to jump through the hoops of the parish's program, or else. And there is no plan B. My theory on this is, you can't get anybody together at the same time anymore. Everybody's schedules, everybody is busy. I think for younger families particularly, we got to cut them some slack, and I just think we have to meet them where they are and not to expect them that one size fits all. It does not work anymore. I think we got to say, we'll deal with your child. I had even recently, a child couldn't come for first penance. So the parent called. It's a divorce situation. In the custody, who has the child one week and the other week, and this is tough. So the mom said, I don't have him that week, and we can't do it, and it's very complicated. Her voice was trembling. We can't make that date. She was afraid I was going to tell her that I was going to send her to hell. I don't know what she was thinking. I said, we'll take care of it privately. Which we did. And the kid was hysterical. You should all have a chance to, you do hear your children's confessions every day. The kid was articulate, he was bright. It was a wonderful experience. And I had a chance then to visit with the mom afterwards when we did this on a special time. But the point is, What's the big deal of taking this child privately to hear his confession? He had to do it with a group. No, he didn't. Who makes such rigid, when we talk about Catholic rules? I mean, there are the 10 Commandments, and they're the big ones. Then there's these other footnotes. Don't confuse them. Program guidelines can change. And I think we got to be flexible. A welcoming parish is flexible enough to deal with the real issues of the parishioners. And I think we got to work at that. And I think that can be developed with your catechetical leaders, with the pastor, whatever. This is our plan. If there are any problems, let's give us some wiggle room. We'll figure out. You got to assume people's goodwill, not they're trying to get away with murder. But even sometimes the attitude is, if you don't jump through these hoops, you're not getting it. How many people have left the church? Their first communion is their last communion. I think that happens far too often. So those are some of the way we do our programs in the parish. How do you give the sign of peace, and to whom do you give it? Now, of course, if I touch you, I'll get your germs. And, I think we're going to establish holy rubber gloves in the pews now. I was many years ago on vacation, again on vacation. It's always good to sit in the back of the church for a priest, because you see what you miss all the time. And we were in the Jersey Shore, and it was one of those honky-tonk parishes. There was a Cadillac raffle going on, tickets there, this fundraising, that. It was whatever. Well, the Mass, we cranked it out and came to sign of peace. Let us offer each other the sign of peace. So there are a couple of us there, so I turned around to the woman. There was a woman behind me. I have mentioned this woman in 1,000 homilies since that day, and she will never know how I have dragged her through the mud in my homilies as a bad example. Be careful who you give the sign of peace to. It could be a priest on vacation, and if you don't do it right, he'll never forgive you. Well, sign of peace. This is what I got. I didn't know who she was. I was from out of town. It was this. I said, lady, if it's that much trouble, don't bother. Grabbed her hand. I never forgot that. Everybody else who was nice, I forgot. The woman who was miserable, I can't forget. Why? Because what is this? We need to be humanly acknowledged. What's the big deal about wishing me well? How am I intruding into your life in such a way that it's a burden for you to say, have a good day? What's the big deal? By the way, I'm on my way to communion, to meet Jesus. That's what I'm here for. Get out of my way. I do not think Jesus is impressed. I don't think so. So those are some of the things just in our church behavior kind of things. And we're just so buried in ourselves, and sometimes your mind's not there, you're not thinking. We know that. Sometimes we're losing our mind. It could be anything. But this attentiveness to the stranger in everything we do is very important. And I think even in smaller parishes where people kind of know each other, but I think we think we know each other, but I don't think we really do. Even in our smaller parishes, I think there's so much turnover. Do you know everybody in this church? Go and, by the way, here's what you all have to do next week and drive them all nuts. Go sit in a place you don't sit, in somebody else's seat. And when you run in, be real nice to the new people who you meet and see what happens. And then tell your pastor. No, I just think break up the routine, because I think we think it's all about what's up here. It's about the building of the community of faith. I really believe that believing is in relationship to belonging. What did you hear these kids saying? In being inclusive and belonging and not being left out. Tell me when you get over that. Never. Never. And our faith should make us even more sensitive to that. Dave?
You notice the two sections are roped off. We usually do that at funerals or congregations that we know will not fill up the whole thing. With the weather the way it's been the last couple of weekends, we decided that we would rope off those two sections and get everyone closely together instead of being because one thing, we didn't know if we would have enough Eucharistic ministers to go around. Who would show up, who wouldn't show up. But just what you were saying was interesting. The people who sit in section 1 or the people who sat in section 5. Well, now where am I going to sit? That's what I see. And you can just, as I would be milling around with the people in the gathering space, but then you see the look, as I'm at the presider's chair at the start of Mass, and the typical people who usually arrive a little bit late, and they come to the pew and realize, just what you said, someone's in my pew. Why aren't they where they belong? And every now and then I challenge the people. I say, I'd love for you to come up here for one Mass and me go there and see what we have to look at all the time.
But I think we are creatures of habit. And that's okay up to a point. The other part is, when we become so desensitized that it's all about us and our comfort and our routine, we are not being welcoming of others. I think we got to think about having our comfort zones invaded if we want to be more of a community, and church is a community of faith. It's not automatic. It's not going to happen because you read a book or have a program. It's going to happen when you, individually and together, decide to be more engaging and inclusive with the people around you day in and day out. Not only in church, but the things that happen here, happen in the grocery store. Didn't I see you in church? What kind of thing? Or I missed you in church, whatever. A couple other things, hospitality in the liturgy and the sacraments. Our sacramental preparation requirements communicated early enough and in a gracious, people-sensitive manner. That's what I was talking about. I've seen sacramental guidelines in churches. Some of them I inherited. I saw some marriage guidelines that were so negative that I said, these would be perfect marriage guidelines for a couple getting married in a concentration camp. I was scandalized. You have to do this. You must do that. You must present this. You got to go through this class. You got to do this. You got to show up here. It was 4 pages, small print, single spaced. I reduced it to 1 page, big print. I said, who needs all this? What type A person put that together? I said, I wouldn't get married in this church. The guidelines themselves were a put down of the couples, like they were suspect. That's why young people don't want to come to church. When they say we make them jump through the hoops, we make them jump through more hoops than they have to. How do we accommodate? Part of my problem is they're across the country and they want to come here to be married. It's a stretch to get people. So we got to cooperate with the church out there where they live, or they want to get married here. They're from here, but they're all over the country. We got to figure this out. Oh no, you can't. You have to be here to do all this. They're not here. It's a whole different thing now. So we got to find with the sacraments. We have to say, oh, this is a problem. skip that, and that has to become, we'll figure it out. That attitude behind the guidelines is evangelization. Yes?
Okay, what about, we talked about marriage and like we have a church back in the beginning, I know several who will not come back, they really cannot come back, they're married, they have a church, they're not divorced, they don't go.
Marriage and divorce? Okay. I tell you, there's no, I mean, they can receive the sacraments if there's not a second marriage. But here, the annulment process is a pastoral outreach of the Catholic Church for Catholics who have been married and ended up in a failed marriage and have remarried and want to either marry again or something else. But the marriage ended in failure. If you want to know what an annulment is, do not ask a Catholic. They make it up. And I am as serious as a heart attack. I get so aggravated when people start telling me what their families told them was involved in them. I said, where'd you get that? Well, my mother-in-law told me that. I said, who's she? She have a degree in canon law? They make it up. It's Mount Everest. It is not necessarily Mount Everest. There is so much misinformation. Oh, it's Catholic divorce. This whole annulment thing is a wonderful outreach for dealing, most situations, I think we have to meet people where they are and see what we can do to help. You have to have a conversation. We can meet them and we'll connect them with the marriage tribunal in the bishop's office and go through a process and see what we can do. Oh, no, it's going to cost your life savings. It's not going to cost your life savings. You're going to pay some fees that cover the cost of some of the secretarial stuff. I mean, but we've made it worse than what it is in the public image. These are Catholics who feel they're on the outside looking in, and there's no place to go with that. Those are the ones we really need to reach out to. It's not about the cost. You're not buying an annulment. Well, it's thousands of dollars. It's a couple $100. And if you don't pay it, they'll figure it out. Don't have to worry about it. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And if you called the tribunal, they would explain that to you people make this stuff up. No one, and we should keep shooting ourselves in the foot. Are people with special needs given flexible options if they cannot meet programs or and also, of course, you've renovated here in fairly recently, handicap bathrooms and all that. You have that here. Do you know there are churches that don't have bathrooms? The old churches that were built in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, back at Conception, I used to be there, of that ilk, of those old churches, they didn't have bathrooms in them. And I said, did people not have to go to the bathroom in the 20s and 30s? Because they're going all the time now. But we didn't, you were there for when you were there, you did, and you went to the bathroom at home, and they didn't bother putting it was no big deal in those days.
We weren't allowed to drink before.
You couldn't drink before, because then you'd have to go to the bathroom and create a stir. And by the way, the little bathrooms that they put in, like in a closet now, you can't get, if you're handicapped, or if you have a walker or wheelchair, you can't get in. So there's a lot more handicap and limitations that people have that some are visible, some aren't. And you know the biggest one? Hearing. When we were building the church at St. Margaret Mary's, I said, hearing is the number one issue in this church. If you can't hear, to the degree, we have to make sure, because a lot of churches, and I don't know here, a lot of churches have mediocre sound systems. And they spend money on everything but sound. Sound is a big deal. If you can't hear, to that degree, you cannot participate. And as we're getting older, we're losing our hearing. I got hearing aids now, and I'm confused. So I'm preaching to the choir here. I think we've covered most of them. Is there anything else here? You have we'll wrap this up. Yes.
I think one of the issues, I'm someone here that has children upstairs. One of the issues I'm finding is it seems like my generation of parents, it's just not important anymore. As far as, for instance, I don't want to bring up a particular, but these kids that have here, you ask them who actually comes to church, their families, not many. Maybe a third or half of those. And they're not necessarily bad families, and my wife teaches fourth grade CC upstairs. We have the same problem. My wife and I was talking about how we get them. They'll bring their kids to CCD.
I will never understand. I will never get this, and I'm already pre-retirement. I will never understand why people bring their children to classes but never worship.
We try to figure it out.
Why would you bring these kids here tonight and they would never come on a Sunday? What have we made CCD, or the Catholic school, very often, that substitutes for Sunday Mass? We don't give sacraments here. And that's what I told the people in Murraysville when we did move to an intergeneration. I said we had CCD on Tuesday nights. And so we gave the option to move to Sunday, starting with the 9:30 Mass, and then go into the class. It starts with the Mass. Worship is part of your faith formation. We think it's sitting in a desk.
I think parents want to bring their kids for classes, especially at a young age, because they want them to make their sacraments, just so that they make their
They make the sacraments and then they're done. First communion until maybe marriage. Confirmation, maybe. Yeah. And that's Catholic minimalism. But that's been around a long time. It is. What's the minimum I need to do, and I can still maybe make it to heaven?
This is kind of on the same thing that you were saying earlier. I think you said it twice. Meeting people where they are, and that's very good for special situations. But also, if your bar is, no matter where you put the bar, people just want to just get to the bar. And just from my own personal experience of bringing my kids up, and they just recently graduated, so many of their peers did not continue to come after second grade. But the parents, because the parents have so many other things to do with their kids, that if you say, come on, it's Monday, well, I have basketball, and the priority is the basketball. It's not religious. So if you don't have
Think of how many generations there are in your families. There's your generation, you have children, grandchildren, you have parents, grandparents, depending on where you are here. Think of the different lifestyles of the oldest generation. That would be the people in their 70s and 80s and up. Let's do the 50s and 60s, 30s and 40s, 20s, teens, 20s, 30s, and teens and children now. We're all on different planets. What a good Catholic was, when I was first ordained, pay, pray, and obey. That's what they said. Don't stop doing that, by the way. But I mean, it's like, it was one thing. The culture has totally changed in the years that we've been ordained priests. The lifestyle of people is, technology has turned everything upside down. We can't keep up with the rapidity of the change and the options that kids have now.
You remember the day when if you needed food on Sunday, you better get it Saturday? Or if you needed gas for your car on Sunday, you better get it Saturday?
I never heard it put quite like that.
So there's so many things that interfere with.
Yeah, and Sunday it may as well be Tuesday now in the culture. We live in a secularized culture, meaning it does not have religious, overt religious structures. I have a friend who lives in Baltimore in a conservative Jewish neighborhood. The men wear the hats, the women wear the long dresses, some of the women wear the curls, and the kids wear the yarmulke. You can't. When she goes shopping on Friday night, it's a killer, because they're all preparing for Seder, for the sundown service. Saturday, they're walking on the streets with the babies in carriages. It's what I remember as a child in our little town up in Indiana County. It's a whole different world. They have maintained their religious practice in a way that's where they are. They are impervious to the culture around them. Those practicing Jews, that's their life. It is very interesting. I don't think we could do that as Catholics. I don't think, because we're so assimilated into the culture, and to try to do that, they'd say, oh my God, they're making us leave the world. But it's interesting to see that the challenge today, I think, is we got to chew gum and walk. You can't do everything. People who say, I go to Mass regularly now. What does regular mean to you? Here. When I say regular, what would you say? Weekly? You know what regular is now? Could be monthly, bi-monthly, a couple times a year. We've redefined the terms because people's lives are totally different. And how many jobs do you need to survive? Then you have divorce, and so you have all of the other blended family issues, and who's got the kids? What are the kids? How many things do the kids get involved in? Everything competes with church. I mean, I'm very sympathetic. I don't know how I would do this. Those of you who are in that category, God bless you. So I think we have to be careful not to be hammering you. We're going back to 1958 to be a good Catholic. We have to discover what that means for a new time. The more conservative people want to go back to something. I'm not that conservative. I think we got to meeting people where they are today is we do the best we can within the limits of the possible now, and we try to work it out together.
Here's a very practical question, and as a priest, and you would be exposed to this as well. Someone calls up the office, I need a sponsor paper because I'm going to be a sponsor for baptism. Father would like to meet you after Mass, to just meet with you. Well, where do you go to church? Well, I'm a member of St. Regis, but I don't know what the Mass times are anymore, because they can change them. Then I, as a priest, eventually meet them and have them read through what canon law says the sponsor requirements are. I just think on their faith, even though I know they're lying.
It's a gray area. See all this white hair? It used to be black. But from dealing with who can be a baptismal sponsor, I mean. But the criteria for the baptismal sponsor are traditional Catholic values, which a lot of people can't live today. A lot of it is and these are younger folks who maybe moved into the city and have never joined another parish. They may or may not be connected, go to church or worship, and then they're asked to be a sponsor. But fewer and fewer people meet the requirement. If I become Pope, I'm going to do away with sponsors. It's the easiest solution. For some people, it's only a gift anyway. I don't know. It's tricky. That's a very hard one. And I think but it is a moment of evangelization where let's talk about it and put this back on your screen rather than, no, you can't be it and slam the door. They're gone forever. We got to avoid that extreme.
One thing I'd like to just ask you about or point out is I think the traditions we have and the rituals it makes us rich. It makes us, I don't know, it's a good thing. And even though it might put some people off, I like to think it's something we have that other religions,
Don't.
maybe few religions have.
Yeah.
You can look at the Muslims and they have their rituals that they
Sure.
bow down. You have to look at the Jews, they have their rituals. We have ours. They may be put off. Some people may find that as a put off, but I think it's a nice thing.
Yes.
It's a benefit.
Well, one of my pet peeves is with little children who are geniuses. God's gifted, they're very bright. They are very articulate. They do everything under the sun, and they can't make the sign of the cross. Now, that's my pet peeve. What I have come to realize, it's not about children. The families don't pray. There is little prayer in the household. So, you're going to beat up kids who don't know how to... What are you going to... I'm not going to beat you. Now, come on, let's do it right. Okay, but that's the symptom of a larger issue. But the rituals do show something. I think just to make one point, we got to wrap this up. This thing about people being afraid to come because they don't know what to do should be secondary. They should come to observe. They don't have to, they don't have to do everything. As if visitors should come and just, within the limits of their comfort, participate. They don't have to do everything, especially if they're not Catholic. And if you're saying, come and just watch, see what we do, and, whatever. And take the edge off of, you have to. Because you do more damage by telling people that, yuns, than I do, we do. You see them every day. Don't feel no pressure. But no, I think we have to say, just come. Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. If that's heart speaks to heart. I think what we're saying is, if you believe, if this is important to you, wouldn't you want to share it with somebody else? We share what's important to us. So I think that's the challenge. I think basically the old way is save your own soul. Now they've changed it. Now bring a few with you. So I think that's kind of where it is. So I think we need to wrap this up. Is there anything else before we bring this to closure? Yep.
I'd like to say one thing, and wrapping it up. I was away, I was born and raised in this church, and I taught school for 3 years, but I lost my way and was gone from this church, probably well over 10 years.
Okay.
Didn't go to church at all.
Uh-huh.
But amazing friends love me.
Sure.
I prayed,
Yeah.
felt me to life, everything. Something sparked inside of me that brought me back to church one day, and back in the beginning when you were saying, the people who left and come back and worry about where they're going to stay and haven't seen me in all these years, like Mr. and Mrs. Woodson. I can tell you, people in this
How did they treat you when you came back? Okay, you're off the hook.
I remember being nervous when I first saw help, because once in a while, I was drink.
Let's be honest. We should have a revolving door on the front of every church because people come and they go in different seasons of their life. Let's be honest.
Now I can imagine not.
Some people who never left mentally. Yeah. Good. That's good. Thank you for sharing that. Good. But that's how it happens. You had your hand up.
I've had some interesting conversations with a zealot Catholic.
A zealot Catholic.
Yes, they have their own group in Pittsburgh. They've got their own division away from it. They don't believe in Vatican II.
Oh, the traditionalist.
Masses in the back altars.
Oh, God, okay.
And according to this one individual, and of course all of them, that we are on our way downhill. And what we is completely wrong. They're still with the rites and the rituals.
From the old,
Right.
yeah.
It's the most important.
The traditionalist Catholic, yeah. Some of that is legitimate and has been, they had permission. Some of it is split off. I mean, it's hard to know. Are you making a statement or a question?
How we're talking here about hospitality is also needs to be.
That's the last thing they're thinking about.
They do not want that.
No, they want the purists. You have to, and God save us from we only want the holy people with us. Or the people which is the people who think the way we do.
They have their own TV channel now.
Do they? Yeah.
On the internet.
Yeah, I think there is a fair, we are polarized in the way, what's right, what's middle, what's left Catholic, and then everybody, you have to watch out for this stuff. Be radical middle of the road. Emphases change. Look at the difference from Pope John Paul II to Pope Benedict to now Pope Francis. They have to be apoplectic in the Vatican right now trying to figure out who's on first. The personality, it's the same Catholic faith. The emphases of the leaders, Pope Francis is saying, let's get out of our ivory towers of doctrinal correctness and get out there and smell like the sheep. Well, they don't know what to do. I mean, it's a whole different take. But what he's really saying is, the mission of the church is get out there with the folk. We've forgotten that. And the man's he's captured the imagination of the world with some of this stuff. I think he really is embodying the mission of the church as understood by Vatican II. There's been a lot of restorationism. Let's go back. We lost it. But I think follow the leader and you're going to be okay. Yeah. Okay. Do you want to say something? No. Okay. I think we better wrap this up, or we'll be here forever. Okay. Thank you very much for your attention, and think about all of these things practically, and what would you do? One thing you would do differently because of what the stuff we talked about this evening. Okay. Florence.
Monsignor, just to say, he was talking about Pope Francis, and I was told by Monsignor Statnik, who's coming next week, who's going to be talking about Pope Francis and Lights of Hope. So this ends up really nice because it connects with next week, Pope Francis. And I was given the task of giving each of you something from Monsignor Statnik to look over. I called it homework. I don't know. He's a teacher. He wants you to read this before next week. Can you believe it? Oh, you do that? Okay. So I'm going to just pass this out before you go. Don't go without getting this nice yellow sheet. And Father Dave, did you want to say anything?
Once again, thanks to all of you for being here, and thank you to Monsignor Gaston. I think what you shared with us was very refreshing, and I hope every and it is true. Hospitality is so very important. We know wherever we go, just as the kids say in the opening remarks, we like to feel welcome.